right, so we're recording. Um, for everyone out there, if you want to just give your little bit of background on yourself, a little intro.
Sure. So my name is Maureen Cumpstone. I graduated from Ursinus College, so I am an alum. I spent the first half of my career in both a large for-profit financial institution and then a nonprofit in startup capacities, really starting up divisions and things like that. And from there, for close to 20 years, I ran my own company in the hospitality industry. And I've now been at Ursinus 6 years, going on 6 years.
Awesome. Does it feel like time has flown by?
It feels like time has flown by. It was funny when I first came back, I could never imagine myself as a student here. I never imagined myself working here, like being a professor. And so when I first came back, it was just such a strange experience. I had been gone for so long, and I kept expecting to see like my friends and people I knew. It was this very interesting flashback. But the values and the feel and the community that I experienced as a student here, are still here. It's like a wonderful place. So
And how about the whole like architectural, like campus? Like obviously it's changed a lot since you've been here. If you imagined how that would have turned out, can you
I
picture?
couldn't. Yeah. When I was here, the pathway through the center of campus on through Wismer and
Mhm.
to Reimer was a road. You could drive there, and
Wow.
it was a little disorienting when I first came back. The um, the Berman Museum was what we called a union, so it was similar to Lower Wismer. You could play pool, you could play shuffleboard. You had late night food in there, so it was a little bit different.
Okay. Um, so you're a part of the newly founded Women's Fund that started last semester. What kind of value do you think it brings to uh, women and those who aren't necessarily in the stereotypical, if you want to call it that, financial industry? Like, what kind of avenues do you think it helps bring them?
Okay, sure. I think one word that I would use, a strong and significant word, is empowerment. So I think participating in the fund, and the reason the fund is so important is it empowers women of all disciplines. I was a psychology major when I was here at Ursinus, and I was fortunate enough after leaving to have mentors and sponsors that really taught me financial astuteness, and it is empowering. And so I think it's very, very important for not only women but everyone to learn about the opportunities to grow money, and to increase your financial capacity through investing in other means.
So is that kind of the approach that you take, like alongside Dr. Deagle, is more just like a teaching tool for investments while you do manage the funds for the college, and like more set up for moving forward in our personal like careers and endeavors?
Well, so one of the things, so we ran our first semester last semester, and one of the significant pieces of feedback that we got from students was they needed some context for the mechanics of investing.
Mhm.
So we kind of jumped right in, similar to the men's fund, with learning the terminology, learning ratios, learning how to read 10Ks, um, doing stock research. And the feedback that we got was, let's take a step back a little bit and
Mhm.
understand the big picture. Let's put this into context. So there's a lot of reasons to learn how to invest and to become educated. One of them is for a professional career. The other is for your personal financial development.
Right.
Maybe others. And so we listened to that advice. And so this semester, we're starting out by focusing in on that a little bit, putting it into context.
Mhm.
And then from there, we'll continue to educate and encourage the development of skills for whatever purpose that women or others in the fund would like to, pursue professionally.
Right. I think it's important for that too. Like Ursinus preaches diversity, not just racial and gender diversity, but also diversity amongst our majors and different backgrounds educationally. So like we have environmental majors in the fund and we have chem
Mhm.
majors in the fund. So I feel like
Yep.
just being in the fund, there's an assumed general knowledge of what stocks are. But I think that approach of making sure that everyone has the same baseline first and then moving forward is something to take with us moving forward, you know?
Right, right. And that's one thing we learned. And, I'll talk a little bit about the U Imagine Center for Integrative and Entrepreneurial Studies. So I did fail to mention that I run the center and I'm the entrepreneur in residence here at Ursinus. And one of the key methodologies that we use for entrepreneurial development is what's called lean startup. So you create ideas, you put them out there, you test them, you take small actions, you learn from the feedback that you get, and you iterate. And that can be applied to a lot of different things in any kind of startup initiative. And I like to think of the Women's Fund as a startup. And so that's where we're at right now. Is okay. We gave it. We ran the first semester. We got some feedback, and now we're incorporating that feedback in to make it even better. And so I think you're absolutely right. That's what we learned. We needed to level the playing field a little bit and provide some foundational knowledge.
Right, absolutely. And I guess branching off that, the entrepreneurial avenue, is there anything specifically in your approach to working with these young entrepreneurs? So you've had a lot of students come to you with startup ideas, or do you think this would work? Or even with you, like you said, with the Women's Fund, is there some kind of advice that you initially give these young entrepreneurs that want to see their vision come to fruition, or is it more like a case by case basis? Like, how do you approach something like that?
Sure. So it's funny. There's a couple answers to that question. So one of the things is it's really simple.
Mhm.
It's literally to start, to take action. How do you take small actionable steps? And my experience here at Ursinus has been that that's the toughest part. But it's not only at Ursinus and it's not only with students, it's with entrepreneurs in general. To be able to take action separates out those from people who have ideas to people that can implement ideas. So that's the first thing, taking action. The second thing is really speaks to Ursinus and the liberal arts education, because a lot of it is about there may be no pathway forward, or there may be a pathway, but you have to figure it out. So you have to talk to people, or you have to research, or you have to do a combination, or there was not a pathway, so you have to figure out a new pathway. So you're using your liberal arts education to figure out, okay, what's the next best step, and then what's the next best step, and to continue to build on that foundation when it may not be clear. So you really have to draw on your problem solving skills, your critical thinking skills, your research skills, all of the things that a liberal arts education provides you with, and specifically Ursinus. So it's interesting because a lot of people don't see the liberal arts aligning with entrepreneurial thought and action, but it's almost they run a parallel track, and it's very interesting because they do align very nicely. So it's the same thing with the Women's Fund, really learning how to, that pathway forward is a little more defined.
Mm-hmm.
But students may be interested in taking those skills and invest and learning to invest in startups, for example, or other types of assets in addition to stock. So I think it's valuable. The skills that students are learning in the fund are very valuable and can be used and applied in a variety of circumstances in their both professional and personal careers.
Right. While you were going off of that, I was thinking of this quote. It's along the lines of, "Do not walk where there's a path, instead create your own path." No.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like in the beginning, it can seem like you can be confident in your idea, but in execution, things start to be a little foggy. You may not know how exactly where to go. Is this, like, if I walk north, is it really going to take me to where I want to go?
Right.
But yeah, I can 100% appreciate that advice, not just for myself and my um, pursuits moving forward, but I think anybody that walks through campus and doesn't really know what to do.
Right. Yeah.
So let's move forward in the entrepreneurial um, route. So let's say you have this startup come into you. Do you necessarily tell them, okay, why don't you look for a hole in the market that no one's really executed before? Do you focus on marketing? Do you focus on how can you execute this? Like, would you mind walking me through like just a hypothetical um, like venture that someone may come to you about? And I know it's hard
Sure.
to execute on hypotheticals, but
All right. Let me pick something popular these days. All right. Online courses are becoming a trend, right? For all
right.
kinds of things, from fitness to cooking to wine tasting to all kinds of entertainment right now with COVID,
Mhm.
in addition to the educational component. So um, the process begins with uh, identifying, as you said, is there an opportunity in the market? So you might have an idea, but is there a real opportunity? And what that means is, can you meet a need or solve a problem that's different than what currently exists? And can you do it in a better way? And it doesn't have to be disruptive like we've seen with Uber or Airbnb or some of the larger startups that we've seen recently. It can be just incrementally better,
Mhm.
or it can meet a need in a different way. And so that's the real key. That's the starting place. Do you have a way to solve a problem that really resonates with people? And does it resonate with enough of them? Are there enough of them? So you may have an idea, but it's for a very small, limited number of people. So part of it is to determine that need and are there enough of them, and we call that product market fit. And when I use the term product, it could be a service, it could be technology, it could be some sort of social initiative or a social campaign. So that's where we start. And then it's, how do you break that into small actionable steps to start testing that out, to validate that the problem exists. And then once you have some validation that, I think that this is enough to make it worth my time and to expend resources on it, to start developing the solution and then do it the same way. Start testing small, getting customer feedback, potential customer feedback. You can even build like a little prototype. It's what we start as part of that process. Some sort of working prototype. On an online course, it could be a simple. So if I walked you through an online course, it would be okay. What's the problem that you're trying to solve? Okay, people right now are limited in their capacity to be entertained or to go out, or they're craving education in areas that they had not looked at before because they didn't have time. Now they have more time on their hands, and so you would, I have a young friend of mine that's a sommelier, a wine sommelier. So I'll use him as a real example. Right now, the restaurant business is pretty decimated, and so the need for his position is not great. So he's looking to do this. So it could be, so are there people out there that are interested in wine? And are there people out there interested in understanding wine, learning about wine, experiencing various different kinds of wine? Are they interested in learning how it's made? So that's the first step, right? Determining that interest. Okay. There's pretty significant interest. How do you start small? Maybe it's a web page with some initial training videos, right? And you start testing that out and see if people like them. And then it can continue to grow from there. So there's a really simple example, and that's not taking it through the whole development process, but that's actionable steps that you can take to actually get something up and running and to start seeing if you can generate revenue or interest.
Got you. So it's a start small and then kind of work your way through kind of approach.
Right.
I can't thank you enough. I'm sorry.
And I think one other point is, and that's for what we concentrate on talking with students about, is everybody starts small. Okay, whether it was Steve Jobs and Apple, everybody starts small. So when you're thinking about it, you see these big initiatives or these big companies, and what we try to educate students about is it all started small. And just like some Steve Jobs did it, or Bill Gates did it, or whomever, you can do it.
So with that said, then, I guess the last point on this topic, but do you ever get someone or some people or a group of people who have that in mind, like they want to be the next Steve Jobs, or they want to be the next Jeff Bezos, with like they almost overestimate their product, their service? How do you kind of take that idea and put it in a more digestible form?
Right. It's a good question, and I can tell you that I have not had that experience here so far. It is the reverse. It's maybe it's the lack of confidence of thinking about how big that could be. Really haven't had that experience, to be honest with you. And I do want to point out, the same process could be applied to any kind of social initiative. So a lot of students are interested in solving problems for social good, and it requires the same processes to get something up and running, even if your mission is for the greater good. And so we do have students like that as well.
Right.
But getting back to the point of the fund, that's why it's so important for students to understand financial information and able to use that effectively for growing their assets.
Okay. I can't thank you enough for your time for today. So I guess one more question would be, what in your career has been early, late, middle? Um, what has been the best piece of advice that you've gotten from, let's say, a mentor or someone you've worked with, or even just like a friend of yours who's seen what you're doing? Is there a best piece of advice that you can give to anyone watching this, whether it's donors, whether it's just supporters of the fund or members? Is there any kind of advice you would be able to give to someone moving forward?
So there's two things. One, the best piece of advice was to take opportunity. So be open to opportunity, be aware of it, and be confident enough to take it.
Mhm.
When you're scared, or even when you think it's beyond your reach, if it's there, go for it. So that's the first piece of advice. The second was from a mentor that I had very early on, and that's why I'm interested in the Women's Fund. My mentor at the financial institution that I talked about, coming out of Ursinus, really taught me the value of understanding financial reports, how to manage by numbers, the importance of investing, and all of the practical aspects of reading, interpreting, and managing financial information. And that stayed with me for all of my life. And so I'm great. I was always grateful to him, and I continue to be grateful to him for that, for those lessons, and for teaching me how to do it. So there are two different ways of answering that question. I hope that was okay.
That was perfect. Thank you so much for your time. And best of luck with the semester as we move forward.
Thanks, George. I appreciate it. I hope
Thank
you
you.
got your answers.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
All right,
Bye.
you too. Bye-bye. George Psaradakis here, Chief Communications Officer of UCIMCO. On behalf of UCIMCO, myself, Dr. Deagle, and Professor Cumpstone, I cannot thank you enough for supporting the fund and tuning in to this episode of The Minutes. Hope you enjoyed, and we'll be back soon with more episodes of The Minutes.